Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, gosh.
All right. Thank you all for coming. I am Thomas Opal. I'm a state representative from Grafton District 9, which comprises the towns of Canaan, Dorchester, and Orange. And I'm here today to announce the unveiling of a plan we're calling the 3-3 plan. We face a crisis in this state, and it's odd to talk about it as a crisis since we've known it since 1993, when the first Claremont decision came out saying that the state was not doing enough for public education. It was not meeting its constitutional obligations. For over 30 years, court after court has reaffirmed that decision. Of course, now we have an effort. If you don't like the way the game is going, you change the rules. And so we have a group that's trying to overturn that decision. But the public understands what's happening. And what has happened in the last 30 years is the burden has increasingly fallen on local property taxpayers. And what that means is that the people with the least are being expected to carry the most of the load. And the people with the most resources have gotten tax cut after tax cut after tax cut. It needs to stop. We need to start the conversation about how we're going to adequately fund not just public education, but state services across the board. And so with the 3-3 plan, which other folks in this group will get into details, the 3-3 plan essentially is a 3% income tax and a $3 statewide education property tax that we believe is the most responsible way. There may be others who have different ideas, but we wanted to get this conversation started. Among the things we're introducing today is we have a website that has a tax calculator so that people can go online and actually put in where they live, whether they're retired or working in New Hampshire or working out of state, and they will, based on their zip code, they will find out what their property tax burden was for 2024, the latest year we have data, and then they can put in their income, and they'll find out just how this plan, for 4 out of 5 people in New Hampshire, will save hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars. We have exemptions on income that are very generous, $35,000. I'll let others get into the details, but as I say, 4 out of 5 people are gonna save a lot of money. So with that, I'm going to start by introducing Andy Valinsky to give more of the details of the plan, and I've forgotten the URL for the website.
You'll see it's New Hampshire TaxSavingsCalculator.com. Thanks, Tom. Andy. Thanks. So I'm Andy Valinsky. I declare here that I am not moving to Florida, Michael. Let me say a couple of things about the 3-3 tax savings plan. It's built on a 3% New Hampshire education income tax with generous deductions and a $3 statewide property tax with a homestead exemption. The idea behind the program is to spread the cost of education more widely and more fairly than we currently do, to make schools and housing more affordable. Let me tell you a couple technical details. So we do have the website. You can get more information at nhtaxsavingscalculator.com. The data on the website is from 2024. Why? That's the last fiscal year for which all the data necessary to do the tax modeling was available. The 3% income tax has a $35,000 deductible for taxpayers and $15,000 for dependents, and another $15,000 for single people who are head of household. So if you have income in a 4-member family of $100,000 a year, you pay 0 in the New Hampshire education income tax. This morning, the New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute posted that the median household income in New Hampshire is $99,000. So 3% doesn't kick in until most people have more income than the median. The $3 statewide property tax is on your assessed value. So picking a random example, a house worth $650,000, $700,000 in East Concord with 5 acres where I used to raise alpacas and a goat is assessed at $400,000. And because it's our primary residence, $250,000 is exempted. So the tax, the $3 state tax, is on $150,000. If you look at this, you use the tax calculator, you'll find that the homeowner for that house sees their property taxes for schools drop from $6,900 to $4,500. Similar experience across the state. Go to NH Tax Savings Calculator, put in your own numbers. You'll see more details about how we designed this plan with the help of the Institute for Tax and Economic Policy. Some people know about it as ITEP. They did all of the modeling for us. Let me turn it back to Tom.
Let me just say, one of the things I probably should have said at the beginning is we've been working for years and years with a false narrative that somehow the real issue is one side is for cutting taxes and one side is for raising taxes. It's a false narrative. Because what has happened over the years is one side has cut taxes for the very wealthiest corporations and individuals in this state.
Thank you.
And the people who are picking up the tab for that are property taxpayers, often middle, working class, seniors on fixed incomes. So the real issue is not about raising or cutting. The real issue is who's paying the taxes, and frankly, who's not. For a little bit of a historical perspective, I want to introduce Mark Fernald, a former gubernatorial candidate and a partner in this group.
Good morning. I became involved in New Hampshire politics 28 years ago, shortly after the Claremont II decision. It was clear, even before that decision came out, that our school funding system was unfair to property poor towns, unfair to the students in those towns, unfair to property taxpayers all over the state. When I got to Concord, I teamed up with Cliff Below, Democratic Senator from Lebanon, and Liz Hager, Republican representative from here in Concord, and we had a bipartisan plan to fix the school funding and property tax problems in New Hampshire. We were standing on the shoulders of people a generation before. In the early 70s, Republican State Senator Rob Trowbridge, publisher of Yankee Magazine, and Professor Jack Mengy, Democratic rep from Lyme, put together the Trowbridge-Mengy plan. And it was the same model as Hager-Below. Income tax for education, statewide property tax for education with a homestead exemption. And with that combination, the people who work in New Hampshire and are part of our economy, they contribute to the education that fuels our economy. And the people with second homes here or businesses, they contribute to the statewide property tax. That's the plan we have today. In 1999, we took it to the legislature. It passed the House. There were about 40 Republican votes for that plan. It passed the Senate with 4 Republican votes. Did not become law because the House and the Senate could not resolve their differences in their 2 different versions, and we ended up with the hated statewide property tax. And 35 years of ever-increasing property taxes. Look at the data, you people in the media. Every year, the total property tax bill in New Hampshire has gone up faster than inflation, faster than income growth, faster than growth in our economy. And why? Because the Republicans have cut taxes on big corporations and the wealthy multiple times and downshifted those tax cuts onto the property taxpayers. This leads me to a story. A woman called my office to make an appointment. And when she arrived, I asked her why she was there. And she said she wanted me to talk to her mother. This is unusual for a lawyer to talk to someone's mother. So I asked her why. And she said that she and her husband bought a house a few years before, and her mother moved in with them. And then her husband died. His pension died with him. And her household income went from 2 Social Security checks to 1. Her income was about $28,000, and her property tax bill was almost $7,000. She wanted me to talk to her mother to see if her mother would help pay the tax bill because she was exhausting her savings. And I felt rage at the legislature that sits in this building that they don't do something about a problem where we're asking elderly widows to pay 25% of their income in property tax. We have a federal system. Every state can innovate. Every state can look at the other 49 states and look at their successes and their failures. We should learn from Delaware, where they have no sales tax, they have an income tax, and property taxes are about 1/3 what they are on homes in New Hampshire. And every elderly taxpayer, every person who wants to retire in New Hampshire and still be a homeowner should love this plan. Because right now, retired homeowners in New Hampshire are paying more in property tax than they would pay in property tax, plus income tax, plus sales tax if they lived in Maine or Massachusetts or Vermont. And that's true for most middle-class families too. So we've got a plan that works for New Hampshire, works for property taxpayers, and solves these problems we've been trying to solve for generations. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. The other thing I would say is, from a history perspective, and I just really discovered this the other day while I was reading through New Hampshire's Constitution. Go take a look at Article 12. The folks who wrote New Hampshire's Constitution originally, Article 12 stipulates very clearly that we all have a responsibility to pay our fair share. The next person I'd like to introduce is a Concord City Councilwoman, Aislinn Caleb. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
You did. Thank you.
Thank you, Aislinn.
All right. I admire the off-the-cuff remarks here. I have a few things written down. All right. So my name is Aislinn Caleb. I am a newcomer to municipal government. I was elected in November to represent Ward 6 in Concord, which is a big part of downtown and some of the South End. I am here today to speak on taxes, which I know is a bit of a dangerous game. Decades of the pledge being the cornerstone of campaign promises has seemed to make politicians on both sides afraid of even suggesting that our current revenue system isn't working for regular people. The over-reliance on property taxes, as many have said, are crushing young families, seniors on fixed incomes, and everyone in between, while still managing to be insufficient in funding our schools and our governments. So from the conversations that I have had in the last 6 months in running for office and beginning to serve, and regularly speaking to constituents, it could not be more clear that the state of New Hampshire is failing municipalities by downshifting the responsibility for funding our schools and governments to cities and towns. For funding our schools and the government to individual property owners and indirectly to renters as well. The state pits us against one another, and the best example I can think of from recently is what happened with Runlet Middle School. I saw this play out when the original plans for the Runlet Middle School building included a provision for 40% of that project to be covered by state building aid. Spoiler alert, that did not happen. State building aid does not usually pan out. And what I saw during that process and after that process were residents in our community fighting against one another. Residents of Concord fought one another over a crumbling school building that so obviously needed repairs or a new building altogether. And they feared that the property tax increases would be too much to bear, and that fear is real because of the housing and affordability crisis in Concord and New Hampshire as a whole, where demand for housing outpaces the available housing stock. If you can't afford to stay in your home, or if you can't afford to bear the continued rental increases, where are you going to go? I am here because I feel a responsibility to advocate for an alternative way forward that more evenly distributes the tax burden. You're hearing details of the 3-3 tax savings plan today, but I want to also call attention to the provisions in the plan for renters. I am a renter. 75% of the ward that I represent is renters as well. And I know that we share the property tax burden. We pay our landlord's property taxes. We pay property taxes indirectly through the rent that we pay. As property taxes continue to increase, so does our rent, which further exacerbates the housing crisis. When I hear of flat income tax, I first worry about heightened impact on middle income and lower income individuals. This plan has a number of deductions to account for that and to not put that disproportionate burden on the working class. If you are a renter and you make $35,000 or less, you will not be paying this tax. And in addition, renters will receive a $750 tax credit. So I work as a restaurant server. I did exceed $35,000 in income last year, but not by much. So I used the tool available on nhtaxsavingscalculator.com, and I was pleasantly surprised to find that given my income, given my status as a renter, I would instead receive money back on taxes around $600. So I would urge anyone interested, especially my fellow renters, to go to nhtaxsavingscalculator.com and input your information to find out exactly how, if this were implemented, you would be affected. And I would wager you would be positively affected. I am so impressed. I really thank everyone for being here. I truly hope that we can find a way forward that gets us out of the over-reliance on property taxes, because it is crushing us and it is pitting us against one another in cities and towns. So, thank you.
We just got a couple more, just to give everybody, we got a couple more speakers. I'd like to introduce Bobby Williams, who is not just a Keene City Councilor, although that's a full-time job, I'm sure. It may not be paid full-time, but I'm sure it's full-time. But Bobby is also the website designer extraordinaire, and he is the person responsible for creating the New Hampshire Tax Savings Calculator document. So, Bob.
Thank you, Tom. My name is Bobby Williams. I'm a Keene City Councilor, and as Tom said, I'm also a web developer and a small business owner. So with the small business owner hat on, I just want to say what I appreciate about this plan is that it gives me a little room to breathe. You know, I don't always have, in business you have good years and you have bad years. And in a good year or a bad year, I'm faced with the same property tax no matter how well my business does. But if we split our eggs into more than one basket and cut off a chunk and moved it to income taxes, then you know, I had a pretty bad year last year due to global economic stability. Didn't make as much money as I wanted to. If this plan was in place, could have saved me a couple $1,000s, which, you know, that helps me make payroll, and that's important. Meanwhile, if I were to have a good year, I wouldn't mind paying a bit more that year. So this really, it smooths it out for small business owners like myself. I think it's important. I also want to just encourage everybody to go visit nhtaxsavingscalculator.com and enter your numbers in there. A friend of mine who's a single mom, owns her house, 2 dependents, she found out she could save a couple $1,000s a year, which I think a lot of people will find themselves in that position, and I think that's why, you know, this is going to be popular. This is going to save a lot of people a lot of money. So, nhtaxsavingscalculator.com. Thank you very much.
Next to last is Mayor of Rochester, Chuck Grassley.
Thank you. I just want to preface remarks. I'm not here as mayor representing the city of Rochester in any way. I'm here representing myself. As a public servant in the city of Rochester for over 50 years, I served as a state representative, as a city councilman, and now I'm serving as mayor. When I go door to door, one of the biggest things I hear from, and particularly in the wards that I've lived in, that have a lot of senior citizens, are property taxes. They're being driven out of their homes by property taxes. Rochester also has, per capita, one of the highest number of manufactured homes in the state of New Hampshire. This last year, we saw the increase in prices of homes go up substantially. Somebody who had a single-wide manufactured home in the city of Rochester, which if it's 30 or 20 or 30 years old, you can't really get a mortgage on the property. It's difficult getting insurance on the property. A home that may have been worth $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 is now worth over $200,000. Their assessments went up over 200% this last year. My phone was ringing off the hook, and as mayor and as a former city councilman and state representative, I'm here representing those people, those seniors, those low-income individuals, those people that work hard in Walmart, that work in our gas stations, that work in our factories in our cities and towns at the lower income levels, that struggle to keep their food on their table, keep their kids clothed in schools, and this is a plan that we need to take a look at. When you talk a 200% increase in valuation of a manufactured home, that's hitting the lowest of income level people in our state of New Hampshire. And that's what I'm here to speak for today. When I ran for council, when I ran for mayor, one of the things I said is I will be a mayor of ideas. We need to take a fair and honest look at all ideas. Let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, but let's discuss it openly and honestly. Not hide it in a closet someplace, not talk about it and compare it to other options that are out there. But let's let the people of the state of New Hampshire know how this will impact you, how this will impact the senior citizens in Rochester that live in manufactured or live in homes that they've lived in most all their life, that they've raised their children in, and now they're being forced out because of taxes alone. And renters, we need to be able to keep our families. We need to have a way for our children and our grandchildren to live here. And when people talk about the New Hampshire advantage, I always looked at the New Hampshire advantage wasn't our taxes, because the people at the bottom get screwed. Our New Hampshire advantage is quality schools and a good environment. And I'm not seeing that coming out of this State House now. If we want to have quality schools, we need to take a look at all the options. We need to have everything on the table. This is one plan of many that may come forward. This is a good plan. We need to take a look at it. We need to give it an honest hearing. We just can't sit here and say, no new taxes, we're not going to consider this whatsoever. I'm here representing the poor citizens of Rochester, the people who struggle every day. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
And our last speaker, and then we'll take some questions, is Representative Chris Munns from Hampton.
Hi, my name is Chris Munns. I'm one of the 5 state representatives from Hampton. It's becoming increasingly difficult for the state to meet its basic obligations, not only public education, but things like supporting our social services system and making sure that we are having the money that we need to provide food assistance to people. We keep taking money away from state government and giving it to either businesses, large businesses from outside the state, or some of the wealthiest people in our state, and the burden to make up that gap is being felt by people on fixed incomes and lower incomes. There are people in my town of Hampton who have lived their entire lives there, who can no longer afford their home because of the high property taxes that we face. We need to look at alternative ways to raise revenue so that we can meet those basic needs and invest in some of the programs that we need to invest in to help our state move forward. Housing, childcare, those types of things. As Mayor Grassi said, we need to be open to talking about all ideas. We should not be held to pledges that were made 50 years ago. We need to have an open, honest discussion about all the alternatives. This is a great first step in that direction, and I really hope that we'll be able to have that kind of open discussion in the months and year to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So you just saw the future of New Hampshire going into the State House. Yep. 30 years ago, there was another class from Claremont going into that State House, and they spent 30 years with the state not responding properly. Let's not do that to this generation. That's what this plan is all about. And we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, I've got a question. You guys are talking about all the ideas, but what about per pupil spending? This doesn't sound like a funding problem. It sounds like an administration and spending problem. from 2001 to 2024, there was a 96% increase in spending. That's $8,265 in 2001 to $26,000.
Is there a question here?
Yeah. I mean, how do you address this? Enrollment has fallen, spending has doubled, and you think we need more spending. I mean, how does that make sense with the data?
We're not talking about more spending. What we're talking about is who's paying.
You're talking about 3% income
We're
tax.
talking about a 3% income tax and a $3 sweat tax that will reduce the local property tax.
So then you
middle
don't-
class and working class people, instead of the burden being on them, the burden will be on those who are most able to pay.
working-
That's a difference. Any other questions?
So you dispute
Any
that
other
there's,
questions?
there's a spending problem.
I answered your question.
I've
Any
got
other
a-
questions?
I've got an answer. We want to raise the same amount of money in a fairer way.
Why do we need more money? It's
I
double.
don't need more money. Same
Next
amount
question.
of money in a fairer way.
Ask your question.
I have a question.
Next question.
One of the concerns people have is that if you add a new tax to cut an existing tax, that 10 years from now you end up with the new tax and the old tax is high again too, because taxes will go up. There's a matter of trust. How do you address concerns like that?
Look at Delaware. Their system has been the same for years, and their property taxes are 1/3 what our property taxes are. In New Hampshire, the middle class is paying state and local tax at twice the rate of the wealthier people in New Hampshire. People $500,000 a year and up are paying at half the rate as the middle. In Delaware, it's basically the same. They're all paying the same rate with their system. So it works. And then because it works, it's stable.
The other aspect of that is this is a plan to get us the conversation started. There's no reason why you couldn't adopt a constitutional amendment as part of it to prevent the income tax portion from being raised. That certainly would be part of the conversation. Any other questions?
How optimistic are any of you that this is going to end up any different than any other plan to reform school funding over the last 2 decades?
We're optimistic in the sense that we've got a plan. We need to make the case to the citizens of New Hampshire, and we're giving them the opportunity to check themselves, and hopefully we can get this momentum going. When people understand they can save thousands of dollars on their tax bill by going to nhtaxsavingcalculator.com and finding out for themselves what their own personal situation is. I think what we've lacked in the past is an understanding of what the impact would be. So that's what we're trying to do.
So would these two taxes replace what's now being funded for age education in New Hampshire? Those go away?
The money raised by the income tax and the statewide education property tax would go into the education trust fund and be distributed basically in a similar way, and that would have the impact of reducing local property taxes. So the burden wouldn't be, right now, the state of New Hampshire provides the least amount of state aid to education of any state in the country, dead last. And what this would do would help get us to a much more reasonable balance between state taxes and the state contribution to education and the local contribution.
So these would add to the taxes that now pay to the education trust.
No.
Is that
No.
right?
No.
They wouldn't. Okay.
No.
So how much is the statewide property tax raise under your plan?
The income
The
tax,
statewide property tax. How much does that raise?
yeah,
under your
so
plan?
the income tax raises about $1 billion
Right.
with all the deductions.
Yep.
The statewide property tax raises also about $1 billion with the homestead exemption. And that's used not to add to local school spending, but to replace local school spending that is derived from the local property tax. So for example, in New Hampshire's largest city, the school tax is currently $6.20. It would drop to the $3 statewide property tax, and there would be no local property tax in Manchester
For schools.
for schools.
So the Education Trust Fund would effectively pay the full tuition of all public school students, or is there any local component? to
So
that tuition?
there are 9 communities which have artificially low spending, where the state's contribution would be virtually all of the spending. For most other communities, and you'll see this when you use the calculator, the state spending increases dramatically, but there's still some local spending, at a highly reduced local property tax rate. A lot of them are cut in half.
Can you give a per pupil estimate for like base adequacy, just so we can compare it to today?
So the spending would be the same. The model is based on keeping 2024 spending the same. The difference is the money comes from the state, raised from a broad array of resources, rather than a locality that may or may not have property wealth paying the majority. It flips the script.
Sure, I understand.
From local to state.
Right, as you know, like Judge Ruoff landed at minimum 7,100. There have been other contentions that that's far too low. That doesn't. Like, what is there an actual monetary number when you run the calculations as to what per pupil the base adequacy looks like?
Yeah, so Ruoff's number is 735601.
Right? Down to the penny. But there are no pennies.
We use the same approach as the adequacy plan currently uses, only we use realistic numbers. So that shifts the spending from local spending to state. So adequacy is at 10,000, not 4,100. Free and reduced lunch, poverty goes from 2,300 to 5,000. English language learners goes from 900 to 3,000. And the biggest change, recognizing its impact on local budgets, we move special ed contribution from the state from 2,100 to 25,000. That results in the big shift, all those factors, from local spending to state spending.
Will this law require all of the revenue from this tax to go to education? And can you bind future members of this body in here 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now to not say, we got plenty of school money, we're going to take it for something else?
So first, the 3-3 tax saving plan is planned. It's not a law. We can't do that.
Can you bind them, though, to enforce
the
all this money? The
legislature, as Tom mentioned, can commit this to a constitutional amendment. But first they have to pass it.
Right.
So pass the law, talk about amendments, put the guardrails on as appropriate. But the one thing about this plan is it introduces reality to this legislature. And it's time that happens.
I think the other thing is this plan provides information and an opportunity through the nhtaxsavingscalculator.com, shameless plug, an opportunity for people to find out for themselves what their individual situation would be with the two scenarios, what I'm paying now in property taxes, what I could be paying, which is going to be thousands of dollars less. And so I think armed with that information, we trust the citizens of New Hampshire to be able to make rational decisions and to tell this State House, no, you've got to change the way we're doing it. We support public schools. We've demonstrated that again and again and again. We just need some help from the state.
But I mean, how much of a political problem is that the leaders of both parties will oppose this?
I want to answer that question.
Okay.
We have a policy problem in New Hampshire. We've had it for years. It's the property tax. People are screaming about property taxes. So we've come up with a policy solution. And we want to have a policy discussion. And we want the media to be part of that discussion. If the media immediately jumps to, well, politically this won't work.
Well, you're the one who has to persuade
You've done a
them. So I'm
disservice
asking
to
how,
the people in
you've
New
obviously
Hampshire.
been at this for a long time. Like, you know how hard it is to run on this as a candidate. You have the candidate running for governor from the Democratic Party has taken the pledge, as I understand it. So, like, what sort of persuasion is it going to take?
Every voter that I knocked on a door, and I knocked on 1,000 doors in my district, in Canaan, Dorchester, in 2024. And every voter that I talked to, I would tell them I supported public education, I supported housing, I supported better health care. And the response from every single one of them was, how are you going to pay for it? And their chief complaint, was property taxes. I think the answer to your question, Josh, is we're going to make this case that this is an opportunity to cut your damn property taxes and have a fairer system and making the people with the least lower their burden and the people with the most make them
Stepping
pay
up.
their fair share. Finally pay their fair share. And I think that's a political case and a policy case where you have good policy and good politics, and they'll come together and work. We just got to give people the information, and that's what the website's about.
Andrew, I'd like to address the question that came up originally, because I actually build local budgets. When people are talking about the cost of a community and how expenses are rising above inflation, we're looking at almost a 17% increase on healthcare costs for our employees this year. We're struggling with that right now. Have you taken a look at the cost of pavement? Doing roads costs double what it did more than double, triple what it did 10 years ago. So we're looking at cost at the local communities. It's not irresponsible spending. It's facing up to the realities that costs on a lot of things that we deal with are going up. When we take a look at renovations in our schools, or heaven forbid you have to build a new school because you had to close 3 schools, it's more expensive now than it was before, and it's much more expensive than the rate of inflation. We struggle every day with these issues, and we sit there and say, why is this going up more than inflation? But we don't have the choice to say, no, we're not going to pave the roads, or no, we're not going to offer our employees health insurance, or no, we're not going to give raises when Rochester loses teachers to more wealthy school districts every day. We struggle to put our budgets together. And if you think that that costs do not go up more than inflation, sir, you need to tell me where that is, because I'm not seeing it in my budgets. I'm not seeing where the rubber meets the road when we have to get out there and fix potholes, and it's costing us substantially more than it did even 2 years ago.
One last big picture question for you, Andy. As you know, the state this year is arguing to overturn the Claremont precedents.
I've heard that.
Yeah. State Supreme Court is different than even the one last year, and certainly the one in the 90s. And I'm wondering, should that precedent fall and be struck down, where does that leave proposals like this? Because a lot of the impetus in the last 30 years has been the idea that the state is constitutionally required to provide this education. Does that undermine this effort?
So I think of it this way. The question is about what if Claremont's reversed. Claremont and its related cases provide guardrails, keeps the issue front and center, is a way that in some respects keeps the state government, including the Board of Education, honest. You can keep or reverse Claremont. That's a different subject. But the problem of over-reliance on the property tax remains. That's a law of economics. If you have a narrow base paying for an important service like education, it costs more for those people. If you broaden the base, you make the payments more fair and equitable. So there is a legal issue. I've said some things publicly. I'll keep saying it, but this is about how we do a fair way of paying for schools. And that's our focus here today.
And if I could add something, I've been involved for most of my career on the other side of the camera, helping candidates in probably 40 states around the country. And the one thing that I do know is the voters hate it. When they think, well, you don't like the outcome, change the rules. They hate that. And that's exactly what this is. We have 30, 36, 33 years of precedent. And the people understand what they're paying and how they're getting gouged. And changing a legal opinion, I think, number one, undermines the trust and confidence in the institution itself. But number two, it doesn't, as Andy said, it doesn't change the economics. The fact of the matter is my property taxes, if you change the rules, my property taxes, instead of going down under this plan, could likely go up. And there will be a taxpayer revolt if that happens. People are already frustrated at how much they have to pay. It's time to change the equation, to think about who's paying and who's not paying. That's the fundamental question. That's the fundamental political question, but it's also the fundamental policy question.
Is this a bill or just a proposal?
This is, we don't, it's not a bill, it's a proposal. It's a plan to start the conversation. And I'm just gonna thank everybody for coming again. I really do hope for those in the media, don't just focus on the politics, focus on the policy too. It's important to have this conversation from a policy aspect, not just a political aspect. It's not just who's winning, who's losing. It's about the fact that our people are hurting, and it's time to help them. Thank you all for coming.